When most of us picture a millionaire, a highly specific image comes to mind. A guy in a tuxedo sipping champagne on a yacht, living off a massive trust fund, and sporting a last name that belongs on a university library. But the data paints a completely different picture. This chart maps the origins of millionaire wealth, and you can see a massive disparity. Between 79 and 85% of all millionaires are entirely self-made. They didn't inherit a single dime. And if we adjust this graphic to look at education, another myth falls apart. You might expect to see a sea of Ivy League diplomas. Instead, only 8% went to prestigious private schools. A full 62% graduated from public state universities. There are over 25 million millionaires in the United States right now, making up nearly 10% of the population. The vast majority of them are regular, working-class people. Hitting that seven-figure mark rarely comes from a birthright, an elite pedigree, or a lucky lottery ticket. It is the mathematical result of deliberate action taken over a long period of time. Once we remove inheritance from the equation, research shows that self-made wealth almost always splits down one of two distinct paths: the risk taker and the saver. This graph illustrates the two journeys. The top line represents the risk takers, entrepreneurs and aggressive investors. They average a net worth of around $7.4 million. But that trajectory is highly volatile, packed with massive stress, and carries a steep failure rate. Down here is the saver's path. These are everyday employees. Their line is incredibly steady, with very low volatility. According to Tom Corley's Rich Habits study, which tracked hundreds of millionaires over 5 years, this specific path takes an average of 32 years of disciplined saving to complete. We are going to look exclusively at the Saver's Playbook. It is a low-risk, highly systematic approach that is available to practically anyone earning a standard income. You don't need to invent a billion-dollar tech company or gamble your life savings on a startup to get rich. You simply need to execute the Saver's 32-year operational formula. The entire strategy runs on strict mathematical guardrails. This is a breakdown of the 50-30-20 rule, dividing every paycheck into 3 categories. 50% goes to necessities, 30% is for lifestyle choices, and 20% is committed to savings and investments. That 20% has to become what experts call invisible money. Savers automate those transfers directly into high-yield accounts or index funds before the cash ever hits their primary checking account. If they can't see it, they can't spend it. To guarantee that 50%, looking closer at this section, we see a hard limit placed on housing. They spend no more than 25% of their net pay on rent or a mortgage. The remainder of those necessities is just as tightly regulated. A maximum of 15% is allocated for food, 10% goes to entertainment, and no more than 5% is allowed for auto loans. Hitting these numbers requires frugality, but there is a clear difference between being frugal and being cheap. Cheap means buying the lowest priced item available, which usually breaks and costs more to replace. Frugal means buying high-quality goods at a value, like purchasing a reliable 2-year-old used car instead of absorbing the depreciation on a brand new lease. Adhering to these strict, unemotional allocation percentages is the physical mechanism that prevents an average earner from living paycheck to paycheck. On a day-to-day level, those percentages are protected by micro-habits. For example, household necessities like paper towels and laundry detergent are bought in bulk. This drastically lowers the unit cost of items that will never expire. They also utilize strict meal planning. Without a plan, groceries end up spoiling in the back of the fridge, and that food waste acts as one of the biggest silent drains on the 15% food budget. Then there is the trap of want spending. This is the habit of surrendering to instant gratification, financing a 60-inch TV or an expensive vacation today, at the direct expense of long-term wealth accumulation. Savers cut costs mercilessly on the things they don't value to fund the areas they actually care about. They treat frugality as a strategic tool for buying future freedom. The ultimate test for a saver actually has very little to do with their starting salary. The real challenge is how they handle their own success and what they do when their income inevitably rises. This graph demonstrates an economic principle known as Parkinson's law, which states that expenses will inevitably rise to meet income. As you can see, when the income line goes up, the lifestyle expenses line immediately rises to match it perfectly, leaving net savings growth at 0. This trap is called lifestyle creep. it is incredibly easy to fall into. The social pressure to keep up with your peers, buy a bigger house, or drive a nicer car makes status signaling feel like a requirement of career advancement. To fight this, savers use the wedge theory as a defense mechanism. If we apply that to the chart, the income line still rises, but now the saver commits 50% of every raise or bonus directly to investments. The expense line only goes up by half, creating a massive, growing wedge of saved wealth between the two. Earning a bigger paycheck only builds wealth if you actively force that mathematical wedge between your income and your standard of living. After 32 years of following this system, the result is a level of wealth that is practically invisible to the outside world. Today, $1 million represents a quiet number compounding securely in the background, far removed from the flashy status symbols of the past. Ultimately, joining the ranks of the millionaire next door comes down to executing decades of saving, patience, and unwavering discipline.